Good morning. Hi, everybody. Just want to talk to you a little bit today. Feeling pretty good. I've been moving and transitioning, but I'm back. Just want you to listen to this song for just a few minutes and listen to the words of it. This is Smokey Norfolk's God is Able. And just let that marinate in your spirit for a little bit. He won't fail. God is able.
Tell me who can make a mountain.
God is able.
Move out of my way.
Who can make a mountain move out of your way?
Who can make a miracle?
Who can make a miracle?
Because of my faith.
Because of your faith. Who can make a miracle because of your faith?
Who can still say yes? And when I'm in trouble,
when I'm in trouble, who's going to help me pass every test? God is able.
God is able.
God is able. God is able. And He won't fail. God is able. And He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't let you down. We've heard this all before. We've heard it all throughout our life that God is able. Just want to talk with you for a few minutes from that very topic. God is able. God is able. There's a scripture in Daniel, in the book of Daniel, the 3rd chapter. It talks about, and I know we've heard it time and time again, it talks about those 3 Hebrew boys who wouldn't bow to the King Nebuchadnezzar, the Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Just wouldn't bow down. And one of the things that they said to the king when he questioned them was, the king asked them, he says, now look guys, I'm paraphrasing, I'm using my imagination as well. I have the scripture in front of me, but I'm using my imagination, I'm using paraphrase so that, so if I don't get all the words exactly right, it's okay. You get the gist of of the emphasis and the point that I'm trying to make. So the king says to these boys, hey guys, when you hear the music, I want you to bow. I want everybody in the land to bow to me. And the Hebrew boys they say to the king, they didn't do it. Everybody bowed down to the king, but these Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, I'm not going to bow to you. I'm not going to bow to the music. I only bow to the true and living God. And so here comes the king. If someone tells the king, they say, hey, you know those 3 boys over there? They ain't bowing to your music. They're not bowing to you. They're not following the rules. Somebody always tells on you, right? And so the rule was, if you don't bow, you're going to be cast into the fiery furnace. So everybody else bowed, and these 3 boys didn't bow. And so the king asked them, they says, now, did you not bow? And they say, no, king, we didn't bow. So the king says, I'm going to give you another chance because I said that you bow when you hear the music, when you hear the harp, you bow to me. Once again, these boys refused to bow. And let me read it for you, just so you get an understanding. I'm reading from Daniel 3:15. It says, now if ye be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye shall fall down and worship the image which I have made. And if you worship not, you shall at that same hour be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Now I want you to listen to this answer. These boys had to have faith. They had to have such a faith that was unshakable. And sometimes you got to be just like that in the midst of trials and tribulations. You have to have a faith that's unshakable. Shadrach, verse 16 says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O King Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, oh my, I'm getting excited. I'm getting so excited. I got to contain myself. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. He will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. He will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. Now, I want you to realize something, that in metaphysics, metaphysicians teach that Nebuchadnezzar is the will of man, right? So you can call it the ego if you like. Sometimes things are going around and the ego stands up and says, this is just. And this is what I want. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to bow down to circumstances. You know, ego, the will, always has its own set of circumstances and its own set of rules that it wants the spiritual you to follow. Now, let me tell you this. I said earlier that Nebuchadnezzar is the will, the ego. But look at what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these three people represent meekness, love, truth, light, and understanding. And so it only makes sense that truth, love, and light should never bow down to the human ego or the human will, unless it corresponds with the will of God. Okay? So here we have the ego, the will saying, when you hear the music, when you hear all kinds of sounds, when you hear all of that, I need you to bow to me. And love says, I'm not bowing. Truth says, I'm not bowing. Understanding says, I'm not bowing. I know that God will deliver me out of this situation. Well, how do I relate that to everyday life? Let me tell you, there are times in our lives where our will wants us to bow to the circumstances. Let me give you an example. When your finances are not right, your will says bow. Your will says go somewhere and cry. Your will says this is going to overtake you. But truth says, my God shall supply all of your needs according to his riches in glory. When there's depression around, something happens and causes you to become depressed. Your will says your ego says you'll never make it. Your ego says this has overtaken me and you should be sad. Truth says rejoice, for great is your reward in heaven. Truth says God will deliver me out of this. So if I had to take a simple topic, it would be God is able. You see, you don't have to bow down to the will. You don't have to bow down to circumstances. But when you know in your heart of hearts, and when truth stands up, when understanding and light stands up, when meekness stands up, they always come together and they bring about the image of the Christ. What do you mean? Well, see, in the story, if you keep reading in the story says that the king threw them in the fiery furnace. Matter of fact, he made the furnace hotter. Because a lot of times when you're going through something, it gets hotter before it gets better. But when you can stand in truth, understanding, meekness, and your light begins to shine, there begins to be a fourth man in the fire. You see, when he threw him in the fire and he went back to check on him, surely the situation should have burned them up. It should have consumed them. See, when people look at you, your situation should have consumed you. Your bankruptcy should have overtaken you. Your divorce should have wiped you out. Come on, somebody. I need somebody that relates to me. Your situation, your accident should have killed you, but it didn't. There's a fourth man in the fire. The story says that when King Nebuchadnezzar went back to the fire, he says, didn't I throw in 3? But lo, I see 4, and the fourth one looks like the Son of God. You see, when meekness, love, understanding comes together, there's Christ in the midst, and it stands up and it protects you. He protects you from whatever is going on. And when you come out of the fire, the story says, when they came out of the fire, they didn't even smell like smoke. You see, you don't have to look like what you've been through, because God is able. God is able to bring you out. God is able, when you put your trust in truth, not a situation, you can come out of your fire smelling like a rose. That's what the story says, if I'm paraphrasing it correctly. They came out and there was no smoke on their clothes. Your circumstances has to understand that I'm just taking you through a test. It's just a test. God is able. Not only is he able, they said something that I didn't catch before in the story. When I read it again, they said God will bring us out. God will bring us out. Now, you know, that's some strong faith. Not only is he able, but he will. So now you should look at your situation, whatever it is. Whether it's your finances, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your inner psyche, you got to know that when you have truth, understanding, love, light, meekness, God brings you out. You see, truth cannot stand up. The ego cannot stand up against the real essence of God. And know that if you are a child of God, you are a son of God, when you line your will, your ego, and your emotions up, there is Christ in the midst. That's a whole different teaching. But I need you to understand today that God is able. If you're in the fiery furnace, if you're about to go into the fiery furnace, don't bow. Don't bow. Don't bow to your circumstances. Keep your head up. Keep your wits about you. Stand up tall even when you're walking in the fire. Even when you're going through. No. See, they knew. They had a knowing. They knew deep inside of them that God, not only is he able, but he will. And because they knew it, because those 3 Hebrew boys, they incorporated it in their being. Where 2 or 3 come together, there's God in the midst. When you get all of your emotions all together and they're on one accord and they're focused on the will of God, not the ego's will, but the will of God and the right thing to do, all hell can break loose around you and God will bring you out. But sometimes you have to go through the fire to come out. So if you're in the fire, if you're about to be thrown in the fire, and I'm closing right now, God is able. If you're in the fire, if you're about to go through the fire, please know that you don't have to die when you know that God will bring you out. So whatever you're going through, know that God will bring you out. He's not done with you yet. He's not through with you yet. He's got something else for you to do. David said, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table. That's what God did with these Hebrew boys. He prepares the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell, I'm getting excited in the house of the Lord forever. Lord, have mercy. Do you know that God is able? God is able. Not only is he able, but he will. He'll bring you out. He has the end of the story. You're not finished because you go through the fire. God is able. God is able. God is able. God is able. Be encouraged, my brothers, my sisters. You're not alone. You're never alone. Don't bow down when your flesh tells you to bow. Don't bow to the situation. When your ego tells you there's no way out, don't bow to your situation. When everything around you is bowing and you don't know how it's going to work, don't bow. Because God is able. God is able. I love you. I love you. Don't give up. Know that God is able.
Tell you God is
Woo.
able.
God is able.
And
He won't fail you when you put your trust in Him. And lastly, trust in the Lord with all thy might, with all thy heart, and He will give you the desires of your heart. God doesn't fail you. God is able. God is able. I love you. God bless you.